Welcome to the official podcast of Geoparks WA, where we will be discussing all things geoparks. In the series so far, we have looked at the Australian Geoparks Network and their goal of establishing geoparks in Australia. After learning all about geoparks and the processes involved in establishing one, we will now turn our attention to executing this process here in Western Australia. We will be once again joined by the Geoparks WA co-founders, Alan Briggs and Ross Dowling, and they will take us through the elements involved in getting our very own geopark up and running in the local community. Let's get started with an overview from Alan Briggs.
One of the things that's been outstanding in Western Australia is the number of people or communities that have approached us to say, can we have a geopark in our area? Remembering that my PhD was a study in the wheat belt, looking at how we could establish a wheat belt, a geopark in the wheat belt, and what were stakeholders' opinions or perceptions about a geopark. At the time, so this is the around 2012, 2013, the local community at each of the towns that I addressed were very strongly in favour of any form of tourism that would bring visitors to their area. So we launched the idea that we would have a wheatbelt geopark focusing on Tammin, Calabar and Quairading and Bruce Rock. That then grew to including Cunderdin, so we had the western connection, and Merredin, which had the eastern connection to the pastoral areas, so we could link forests to the pastoral areas in the east of the wheat belt. That's still a process that's ongoing. There are challenges, but that we can overcome those. Then from the Parongarups region, we had a request to have a look at a geopark down there, and that was back when I was doing my PhD, and only recently we've had another request to establish a geopark down there called the Mountain Ranges Geopark, so it's just north of Albany. We've also been working with the Murchison Georegion and aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark. That was one of the first ones we started working with, and I personally now are working with Wanneroo, Joondalup and City of Stirling, and I've only recently been involved with both Joondalup and Wanneroo for development of their visitor tourism strategies. So they're steadily working along towards a geopark in their area, but being local government, there are some challenges in getting processes through the system. Further south, we have Nannup WA Geopark, which is, I think I'll let Ross talk more about that one. He's more directly involved. And again, more recently, I've had an approach from the Lancelin, Gingin and Dandaragan region for another geopark proposal. And a lady up there who's been doing university studies has developed a 4 geosite drive that's looking very impressive. So we'll continue to work with her. It may only be a geo drive initially, but there is quite a bit of excitement for a geopark in that region.
So as we can see, there is a high demand for geoparks in Western Australia, and as previously covered, these geoparks would provide immense benefits to all members of the community. Alan briefly mentioned the proposal of Nannup Geopark. In our last episode, we talked about the levels of geoparks, and Nannup is well on its way to achieving UNESCO Global Geopark accreditation.
Yeah, so the only geopark in Australia right now is Nannup, WA for Western Australia, Geopark, and it's in the Shire of Nannup in the southwest of Western Australia. And the interesting thing about that is it was started, the whole concept, by a businessman, a local businessman. The treasurer of the global geoparks movement came into geoparks because she's an artist from Norway. I've met others who are Indigenous people, farmers, from all walks of life, people have come to geoparks. So it's not just about geologists, as you might expect. But the Nannup Geopark, since that vision was made by Mark White a local businessman 4 years ago. He had the vision to start a geopark, and now it is the only geopark established in Australia. They are keen to get UNESCO Global Geopark status. That might be another 3 or 4 years' time, but that's where they're headed. He has got around him a group of at least 20 people, all absolute experts in a range of fields, from geology to geography to ecology to Aboriginal culture to education, politicians, and so on and so forth. So they have got a strong community building the geopark. They've been to the Asia Pacific Geoparks Network conference in Vietnam. They have spoken to the world leaders on geoparks. They've come back with a fire in their belly to get this geopark happening. They won't give up. They are planning in a couple of months' time to have they'll have a strategy meeting to plan for the next 10 years, the future of their geopark. And why is there a geopark in that area? Well, to be honest, originally we actually didn't know for sure if the geology qualified. We just had the vision, the local people wanted the geopark, but they actually didn't know much about the geology, or even if there was significant geology. But they've found it, and now what it is they've found that going through their whole geopark is the longest underwater lava flow in the world, and it actually comes out on a headland in their area. So that's substantial geology, very significant, and will be a reason for them to become a UNESCO Global Geopark. But Nannup is a great community group that just goes to show what can be achieved when the local community gets behind this concept.
It is great to hear of the successes of aspiring geoparks throughout Australia. Back on the point of establishing these geoparks, it is surprising to see that we have yet to achieve UNESCO accreditation here in Australia. Are there any contributing factors that are preventing us from this that we could address?
When we started looking at geoparks or re-establishing geoparks in Australia, there were lots of misconceptions about what they meant or what was required of them. People compared them to World Heritage Areas and biosphere reserves, which require government involvement and are run by government. Whereas how we relate geoparks now is that they're like a regional tourism organisation. They sit over the land. They don't take the land. They don't need land to be allocated to them. We don't need legislation to drive them. There's no conflict between national parks and geoparks. In fact, we work together and can help one another. So those sorts of misconceptions have been put aside now, and we've been working with government agencies. They're starting to realise that they don't need legislation, they don't need land to be allocated to them, unless we're leasing land or putting in structural infrastructure for interpreting the geology of the area. So it's been a big eye-opener for a lot of people, a lot of agencies, and we continue to work towards that.
So there is hope for the future of Geoparks WA. In fact, there have been many Australians involved in establishing geoparks throughout the world. Would you like to share some of these stories with us, Ross?
So, yeah, it's interesting. There are Australians that have been involved in establishing geoparks in different parts of the world. For example, Dr. Young In, who is an Australian, but originally from Hong Kong. He was the founder of the Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark. Now, if you're thinking normal parks like a national park, you'd think, how could there be a geopark in Hong Kong? But geoparks can sit over cities. They can sit where it's about the geology. It's not about the fauna and flora necessarily. Another young lady, Teresa, from Australia, was working over in the Oki Islands off the west coast of Japan, and she helped the Japanese people there get the validation for the first geopark there on the island. So it's now being revalidated a couple of times. But yeah, this young Australian, she was involved with that. And when we set up the Australian Geoparks Network, she was a board member there. She's now having a family, so she's taken a step back. But it's interesting to see that, and you know, I've been instrumental in the Waitaki Whitestone in New Zealand. So there are Australians getting geoparks happening in other parts of the world, but yet we still don't have geoparks in Australia.
Despite not having any UNESCO Global Geoparks in Australia yet, I'm sure that this is something that we can achieve through the ongoing efforts of Geoparks WA. Thank you to Professor Ross Dowling and Alan Briggs for your input in the process of establishing geoparks here in Australia. We hope that you have learnt something new through this episode, and that you will join us next time when we will discuss some of the UNESCO Global Geopark success stories. For more information, head to our website at australiangeoparksnetwork.org and follow our social media page at Geoparks WA.